class where I'm going to show you how I hacked my free pattern, the zip up card holder. So it is faux leather, cork or vinyl friendly. So the original pattern has been written more for kind of lightweight, medium weight fabric because it has those card slots at the front. And if you've ever made them with something like quilting cotton, you know how much bulk they create. And I've been using this wallet for maybe about 2 years now, and it is really, really dirty, to be honest. So I really wanted to create a new version of this wallet, but I wanted to make one in faux leather since I have that fabric, and I thought it's going to add a little bit more durability to the wallet. It will look more like an adult version because this one is more for a little girl, but I really loved it, so I kept it. And I thought if I use faux leather also, I don't have to worry about the fabric getting so dirty. I have so many stains here from like my jeans when I when I put this pocket, this wallet in my back pocket, and the fabric kind of bled, or however you call it, when it was raining, and yeah, I cannot get rid of those stains. So I thought it's time to make my own, like make a new version of this wallet, and that's what I've made. I used faux leather for this one, and I absolutely love it. I cannot tell you. I used the hacked version before, so I have already another tutorial where I show you how to modify this pattern. You can see how much I love this pattern, and to add that connector and also flap on the back. So the original pattern, this like this one, it doesn't have that connector, and the slip pocket is just by itself. There's no flap. But if you want to create this version, you still can. I have a separate video tutorial that will show you exactly how to modify the pattern and also how to put everything together, just in case if you are wondering. So today I'm going to show you exactly how to modify the original pattern and create separate pattern pieces for those card slots, those card pockets, so you can sew them with non-fraying fabric like cork, vinyl or faux leather. Because what I found, my machine just doesn't handle that much bulk if I was going to sew this wallet with or using the original pattern. So this is the pattern, and if you've made those pockets before, you know that they kind of fold like an accordion. So there is pretty much like a lot of bulk. You see how many layers I would have to sew through, and my machine would basically hate me for it. So I thought, since I released my Mallory crossbody bag, that's the latest pattern I released, and in that pattern I actually used two different methods to make card pockets similar to those ones, both in woven fabric like the original standard version, the accordion folding version, and also I created separate pattern pieces. So if you want to sew that bag in faux leather, vinyl, cork, and make those pockets in that fabric as well, there's a separate like a version with separate pattern pieces, so you can avoid so much bulk. So even if you are using domestic machine, you should be able to sew that bag and also this wallet. So today that's exactly what I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you how to modify or how to actually create those individual pattern pieces so you can sew this wallet in non-fraying fabric. So shall we start? If you've got any questions, as always, let me know in the comments. Let me know as well if you can hear me and see me properly. I always worry that my internet drops and things happen. So I'll change the camera view now to my desk. And bear with me. Here we go. I think I've got this. So let me just put my tea aside we don't want any accidents. So here I have my original pattern piece, and to be honest, for this particular wallet, that's all you need, because all you have to do is to kind of take the dimensions of this pattern piece and the position of the pockets, just to make sure those pockets are in exactly the same position. So if you are placing your cards inside, you don't have to worry about those pockets being either too shallow or too deep, because you've put your pockets either too high or too low and everything is out of balance. So I wanted to keep the overall look of this version exactly like it is the original version. So I wanted to mention also that you can use this tutorial, this hack, to probably modify different patterns. So if you have a favorite pattern which includes pockets like those, but in the original version when you have to fold them over, you will be able to create those pattern pieces for that specific bag as well. So even though I am mainly focusing on the cards, on the zip-up card holder today, on this pattern, you will be able to take that information and use it in other projects as well. I just wanted to mention that as well. So let me start. I'll have my paper. I just need one for now. So what you want to do, if you want to follow me along, is to grab the original pattern for your card slots or card pockets, however the designer named it. Mine is called card slots. And what we need to do is to basically find the finished measurement of that middle panel. So of that middle panel, I mean this center panel on the front, where we are creating those pockets. So I already folded my pattern in exactly the same way as if I was folding my fabric. So this is the finished size of that pattern piece, because we want to make sure those new pattern pieces that we are going to create, once we put them all together, they are exactly the same size. So then we can finish sewing our project. So for me, for this pattern, this comes to 11 centimeters and the height is 12 centimeters. So what I'm going to do is to actually draw a rectangle in that size. So 11 by 12. Let me just start somewhere here. And that's 12 in height. Did I do that wrong? Wait, 12 in height. Yeah, I did that wrong. See, I cannot measure anymore. All right, so I've got my rectangle. I hope you can see that on the screen. So if I take my pattern piece and I place it on top, I can see that this is correct size. So now that I have this rectangle drafted, all I have to do is to find the position of my pocket. So this top edge here is the top edge of my pocket. So I have one here and then one here. So I'm going to mark them on my rectangle, and I'm just going to draw. Just want to make sure I'm drawing parallel lines, so that's about 7 centimeters. So I'm just going to draw one line across like this. So that's the top edge of my pocket. And then I'm going to measure 1.5 centimeters and draw another line, because that's the other edge of my pocket. So this is pocket 1 and this is pocket 2. Let's number it, pocket 1 and pocket 2. So now what we want to do is to create individual pattern pieces for those pockets so we can reduce the seam allowance around those side edges, because that's where all that bulk is happening. When we look at this pattern, all that layers, so depending on where you are at along this seam, there is going to be either, you know, a little bit of bulk or very, very like a lot of bulk basically. So I want to keep the bulk to minimum so my machine can actually handle it. So what I like to do is to draw my pockets at an angle so I can reduce the bulkiness. But before I do that, I'm just going to add my seam allowance along the sides. So my pattern has uses 1 centimeter seam allowance. So I'm just going to draw kind of like dashed line so I don't get confused, because by the end of this it's going to be quite busy before we actually make our pattern pieces. So I just want to make sure this is as clear as possible for you guys. So those 2 dashed lines indicate the stitching line. So this is basically my seam allowance. I use 1 centimeter seam allowance. So now what we need to do, if you are using different pattern, you need to find out the depth of that pocket. So my pockets are, if I remember correctly, 4.5 centimeters. Let me just double check. Yeah. So I'm just going to measure 4.5 centimeters from the bottom pocket and draw a line. Maybe I'll use different color. Let's see. I'll just use green one for now, just to distinguish. Distinguish? Is that the word? All right, 4.5 centimeters. So I'm just going to draw a line across like so. So that is the bottom edge of the lowest pocket, the second pocket. But that's going to be our guideline as well to create our individual pattern pieces. Because on this original pattern we were folding our fabric, we don't have to worry about seam allowance. But because we are not folding the fabric on this version for the faux leather, we need to add seam allowance, because once we put our pockets together, we need to make sure we actually stitch the bottom edge of our pocket so our cards don't go inside and kind of get loose. So what I'm going to do is to use my pen and actually draw another line that is 1 centimeter below that line. Here we go. So this area here is my seam allowance. So I am going to look at this black line when I'm actually creating my pattern pieces. So now we can start shaping individual pockets, and then I'm going to show you how to trace them to create individual pattern pieces so you can actually make your zip-up card holder or any other pattern that you want to use, basically. So what I like to do is to keep the seam allowance along the sides to a minimum, like I mentioned. So for this, let me see. If this is the top edge of our first pocket, we want to make sure we have something to catch it along the sides. So I'm going to use the distance between those two pockets as a guideline, and I'm going to actually add this portion here and this portion here as I will keep it as the seam allowance. So this little area will anchor my pocket to the entire project. And now I'm going to remove the seam allowance from this area. So what I like to do is to kind of measure about 5 millimeters, so that's like a 1/4 of an inch from the seam allowance, and then I can connect that notch up like so. So if I take a red pen and mark the shape of the first pattern, I hope you will be able to see it better on the screen. So they are very weird, kind of, those pieces are weirdly shaped. Actually, I made a mistake because I'm supposed to use the seam allowance. So you see, I'm already making a mess. So we need to join this point with the bottom edge where we are adding seam allowance, not along here. Just ignore me and measure that 5 millimeters along the edge of the seam allowance. Otherwise the angles of your pockets will not match. So that's our first pattern piece basically. So that red line, I hope you can see that on the screen. So that red pattern piece, that's the first pocket. That's the top pocket. Now I'm going to show you how to shape the lower pocket. So here, that black line is the top edge. So that's, when I say top edge, I mean the top edge of the pocket. So we've created the first pocket. Now we're going to create the second pocket. So this black line is the top edge of my second pocket. And I'm going to add, we need to add some seam allowance again to anchor it to our side panels, and so we can actually create our pattern pieces. So what I'm going to do is to measure about 1 centimeter. You don't need a lot. If you want to keep it consistent, like, you can still measure 1.5, but I don't need that much. I know 1 centimeter is more than enough. So I'm just going to measure 1 centimeter from the top edge of my pattern. And then you basically need to draw those 2 tiny lines. So this area here, let me just grab different color. So this area here is the seam allowance for my pocket. So if I do that with red, this is the seam allowance. This is our seam allowance. So now if I shape my second pocket, all you have to do is to keep a little bit of that seam allowance along the side so you can anchor it, and then follow the red line or follow the first pocket. So you are following the outline of the first pocket to create the pattern for your second pocket. Here you go. So the red one is the first pocket, and then the green one is the second pocket. So those will be the individual pattern pieces. So now all we have to do is to basically figure out the top portion of our main, like the center panel. Not to confuse you, the bottom edge, like the bottom part, belongs to the first pocket. So when we are going to trace our pattern piece, which I'll show you in a second, will include this portion with the pocket as one piece. So I'm going to grab blue pen or marker, and to figure out how long is that top panel, so this portion of our pocket, of our main front piece is, again, you know that the depth of your pocket is 4.5 centimeters, at least on my pattern. So what you can do is to measure from the top edge of your first pocket. You can measure that distance. And again, if you want, draw yourself a line. But again, because we are sewing, we need to sew the bottom edge of our pocket. We need to add seam allowance. So I'm just going to add a little bit of seam allowance, not full 1 centimeter because I don't need it. I'm just going to add 5 millimeters since that's the width of my ruler, and draw a line. So the top panel needs to be as long as it needs to be, so you can actually stitch the bottom edge of your first top pocket. So I'm just going to mark that with my blue marker. So hopefully you can see the difference, the different colors on screen, and actually recognize which portion I am talking about. So now that we kind of made a map, what I like to call it, I call it a pattern draft. Now that we have it, we can actually use it to create individual pattern pieces, because there is no point of you cutting it out since they overlap. All those pieces overlap. They need to be kind of placed one on top of each other, like layered. So I like to create my patterns this way because it gives me visual representation of what it's going to look like once it is all finished, once those all layers are stitched together. So now I'm going to grab tracing paper and I'm going to show you how to trace your pattern pieces. So let me know in the comments if you are following me along, if everything that I'm talking about, if everything that I'm explaining is clear. I just want to make sure you actually understand the concept. I need to grab masking tape so I can stick my tracing paper down. All right, so let me first trace the top panel. I'm going to go from the top to the bottom. So first we are going to trace what is basically behind every single pocket, that top panel. So that's going to be the blue outline. And this pattern is very easy because it's just a simple rectangle. So I am using the outline of my draft to basically trace the pattern piece. Here we go. If you want to mark your center front or like midpoints, you can do that. I'm not going to bother too much. You don't really have to worry about seam allowances because we've already added seam allowances, so this is very simple. All you have to do for this pattern is add your grain line, and I always tell my students that grain line always, well, majority of times, there are few what's the word I'm looking for, exceptions. But majority of time, I would say 99.9% of time, grain line runs perpendicular to the base of your project. So if that was a bag, that was the base of the project, grain line runs this way. If you are using directional print fabric, you want to make sure your fabric print runs this direction. So you can use the bottom edge as a guideline and draw a perpendicular line to indicate the grain line. And then add your label because you want to make sure you know exactly what this pattern piece is. So I'm just going to write the name of my pattern, which is zip up card holder. And I'm going to write hack in brackets so I know. And then let's call this top panel. And we need to cut it one time from non-fraying fabric. So cut one time non-fraying fabric. If you want to add those pockets on the back of your wallet and you don't want to have a slip pocket, then obviously you will have to cut it twice. But I am focusing mainly on the original pattern, so we are only adding those pockets to the front panel. Excuse me. So now that I have this first pattern piece traced, I can move on to the second pattern piece. You can cut it out. I just don't want to waste your time. So now I'm going to focus on the first pocket, so that red line. So I'm going to... Wait, I need to cut that because it annoys me. It gets in my way too much. So let me just put this pattern piece aside. Stick this down. Here we go. And now we can trace our first pocket. And all you do is to trace the outline of that pocket. You don't have to worry about anything else at this point. Here we go. Again, if you want to mark your notches, your midpoints, you can do that. Actually, talking about the notches, there's one thing I want to mention. On the first pattern, what you can do is to mark the position of your pocket, at least the top one. So the top edge of your first pocket, just add a couple of notches so you know exactly how to position your first pocket. That can be really helpful when you are sewing your pattern, when you are sewing your project. So now that I have my second pattern piece traced, again, we need to add grain lines. So I'm going to use the bottom edge to draw a perpendicular line. We want to add our label, so let's call this pocket. And obviously that's for zip up card holder, and that's hack. And we need to cut it one time from non-fraying fabric. Now, I want to mention something. If you are using more thicker fabrics, like your cork, vinyl, for leather is nice and thick, you can leave this top edge raw. However, because I usually use more lightweight, thinner faux leathers or corks, I actually folded my edge. And also because the second pocket is folded, I want to keep the consistency of that. So the finished look is exactly the same. Otherwise, the top edge, the top pocket would have a raw edge and this edge would be folded. So I just wanted to mention that. So what we need to do is to actually add that seam allowance. So I'm just going to add 1 centimeter seam allowance along the top edge, extend my sides, and I'm just going to label this original line as fold line. If you don't want to have this line, you can remove it and just mark yourself a couple of notches so you know exactly how to fold it. But I prefer to just keep this line so I know exactly what it is. And adding a note to your pattern piece that this is a fold line is also very, very handy. So that's our second pattern piece. Very easy. And now I'm going to show you how to trace the last piece. Let me see if I have a space next to it, because I don't know why I drew this pocket in the center. such a waste. Anyway, so now to trace the bottom panel or the bottom pocket, we need to kind of merge two pieces. So we are going to merge the green pocket and the bottom panel. That will be our bottom pocket or bottom panel pattern piece. So we need to merge those two areas, even though they overlap, but we are folding it along the top edge. So we need to basically create one pattern piece. So to do that, it's very simple. You need to follow the outline of your draft in exactly the same way we've done it so far. So let me just first draw the pocket. So I am following the green outline of my pocket. Here we go. So now, because we need to fold our fabric along the top edge, we need to add this rectangle, that bottom part of our, so if you look at my finished wallet, this is actually that bottom part that is visible. The pocket that I traced is inside, it's on the other side, so you don't really see it. So we need to make sure this is one piece. So all you have to do is to pretend you are sewing the seam along the top edge. So either you can flip this over like so and align the top edge again of your pocket with the top edge of your pocket that you traced, making sure your side seams, side edges also align, and then trace the bottom rectangle. Just like that. It is as simple as that. And since this part is the visible part of our pocket, I prefer to use this rectangle as a guideline to draw my grain line. Again, I'm using the bottom edge as a guideline to draw a perpendicular line. And now all we have to do is to add label. So again, the name of the pattern, zip up card holder, that's hack. And let's call this bottom panel. You can call this pocket 2 if you want. I'm just going to call this bottom panel. And again, we need to cut it one time from external fabric. And just like that, you've created individual pattern pieces for your pockets. How simple is that? It is so easy to do. This part can be a little bit confusing if you just look at it, but once you know exactly where your pockets are situated and how to reduce the bulk, then it is super simple to actually trace and create your pattern pieces. If you are using, let's say, different project, or maybe you wanted to make a taller version of this wallet and you want to add additional pockets, all you have to do is to cut more of those pocket pieces. So that the second pattern piece that we've created, so that green outline, you will have to create more of them, and then they will be obviously layered on top of each other. But the process of sewing is exactly the same, and you don't even have to create any additional pattern pieces. All you need to do is cut more of the fabric, to add more pockets. But yeah, so I hope that was really helpful for you. Let me just change my camera and see if there are any questions. I think we don't really have any questions today, so that's good, I guess. Maybe you understand everything, maybe you understand nothing, but no questions is okay with me as well. So that's all I wanted to show you today. Very easy, very simple hack which you can use in various different projects, not just my zip up card holder. But because this is such a great pattern, I love coming back to it. I always think of some other hacks that I can incorporate, and I already have a few other ideas for the future. So if you've never tried this free pattern, make sure to download it and modify it as you wish, and you will love it. This is such a quick project to make, and it's super fun, at least in my opinion. And I am very, very happy with this version. I'm going to have to transfer all my cards and my cash into this one very soon. So yeah, that's all from me today. There is nothing else I have for you today. I just wanted to share that, since a lot of you said yes on my Instagram stories when I asked if you want me to show you the hack, and I think it is super practical and it's super helpful to know how to modify your patterns so you can create original designs, you can customize them, and you can also customize the pattern to suit the fabric that you really want to use, because my machine would never sew through all that bulk if I decided to sew this wallet using the original technique, the original pattern. So now, because I've created my pattern pieces, I created those individual pattern pieces, I don't have to worry about it anymore, and I already made another version with another like a color blocking effect, and I love it as well. So that's all from me. I hope to see you in the next video. Oh, before I let you go, I just wanted to let you know that I'm going to film a very quick tutorial showing you how to put those pockets together so you don't have to wonder, you know, because I know sometimes visualizing steps can be a little bit difficult. I know I struggle with that quite a lot. So to make sure you can actually finish sewing this wallet and you have no problem whatsoever, I'm going to film a very, very short tutorial just showing you how to sew those pockets. The rest of the wallet is exactly the same as per original sewing instructions, and I have videos for it and full detailed sewing instruction included with your free pattern, so you will be able to make this wallet in no time. So that's coming next week, so stay tuned. Anyway, if you've got any questions regarding this tutorial, or if you have any suggestions for future hacks, tutorials, videos, let me know. I always love to create something that you want to see. I want to make sure that my videos are interesting and helpful to you. So as much as they are fun for me to make, I want to make sure they are helpful for you. So that's all from me. I hope to see you in the next video. Have a wonderful day and stay crafty, friends. Bye.